it is game week 24. You have all your chips and you don't know which chip to play. Well, this is going to be your chip strategy guide for game week 24 and beyond. So, without further ado, let's get into it. All right, guys. Now, we have a couple of chips to talk about here. What we're going to do basically in this episode is we're going to just go through each and every single chip, when it is most optimal to use, and if you should use it in game week 24 or not, and potentially what game week you should use it. So I think let's start with the triple captain because it is the one talked about the most in this game week 24. So triple captain, quite frankly, nice short. It basically triples your captaincy's points. Now, this game week 24, Mo Salah's going to be playing Bournemouth and Everton. Do I think this is the best time to use a captaincy? In terms of a scenario of when the best time to use a captaincy, it is when the player has a lot of fixtures. And this is going to be the case with a lot of the chips, quite frankly, because of course that means more points. So now that you know that, it's also about, of course, the fixtures. I think this specific case, it is a tough fixture for Mo Salah. In all honesty, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool struggled against Bournemouth and won 2-1 and Mo Salah got a goal. And then Liverpool somewhat also, or let's say they struggled against Everton and won 2-1 and Salah scored a goal. And then they won against Bournemouth, but they won 1-0 and Salah only assisted the goal. And so when I triple captain someone, I want to make sure that they're scoring, at least 15 points. You understand? That could quite frankly triple up. And so I think there'd be better opportunities in terms of not Mo Salah necessarily, but maybe a different player having better fixtures down the line. There is a smaller double game week happening in game week 33 and going to be in game week 36 is going to be a huge double because there's going to be a lot of teams. But we'll speak about which are the most optimal chips to use in a bigger double and a smaller double. Because this is a smaller double, I think this is okay for Mo Salah to use, for you to use a triple captain on Mo Salah, but it's not the most best, but it is the optimal case because there is a double game week. So you can play this chip on Mo Salah in this game week. And now that you know that about the triple captain, let's move on to the bench boost. Now, bench boost, again, as we know, the more games you have, the better. The time in which I like to use the bench boost, where I think it is most optimal, is when you also actually have a bench doubling. That for me is like, then go for it. And so I would actually most try and target the double game weeks as well, where I can actually get a whole team that is actually doubling, including the bench as well. That for me is, I feel like, the most optimal time you can use a bench boost, because a bench boost where they're just playing one game, you're looking to at least have at minimum about 2 times 4, so 8 points. So you have to get at least 8 points. I think a good bench boost is, definitely going to about like 12 points and beyond. So if you have a double, then, you're somewhat doubling that as well. So I would try and look to see if I can actually get a bench that also doubles. And I think that's going to be achievable in game week 36 because it's a big double, meaning there's a lot of teams doubling. So I would rather keep the bench boost for that time when I know the entire 11 is doubling and the entire bench and my entire bench is doubling. Now, that of course is going to have to have some strategic moving and transfers and stuff and building up to that. But that's what all your other chips are also useful. Which brings me to my next chip. The chip I believe needs to have creativity in it as well. That is the free hit chip. Now, the free hit chip, if you don't know basically what it does, is it allows you to choose an entirely different team for one game week. And once that game week is done, your team reverts back to what your team was before you activated that chip. So it's literally that. It's a free hit. Just go free for all, do whatever you want to do, but of course within your budget. So it's not like an ultimate chip where you don't have budget. You have to use your team value, the budget that you have in your actual, what your team value actually currently is. Now, the beauty of this and where the creativity comes in is where if you use this chip very creatively, you could quite frankly with other chips like the Wildcard have technically 3 separate teams. That could be the team that you have before your chip, then that could be a new team with the free hit chip, and then of course say you use the Wildcard after that, you have basically a third team, a entirely different new team. And so this chip is widely used by managers, engaged managers, because of what they can do around the chip and not just with the chip. Now, optimally in terms of when is the best time to use this chip, there's 2 scenarios here, which one I prefer. Now, there's the scenario where there's a big blank game week. And so there's a blank game week happening in game week 29 coming around the corner. There's a few teams that are going to be playing, not playing. And so you can maneuver it by not using this free hit and actually making sure you're using the right transfers so that you have an 11 that is playing. And then there's a scenario where there's a big double as well. And I think if you're going to use your chip in the double, in a blank, it has to be a big blank where there's a lot of teams not playing, and sure, fine, you don't even have 11 people that you can field, and so you have to go and select from literally the 4 teams, the only 4 teams that are playing. And that could be the case in game week 34 when we have a big blank just right after the game week 33 double, and before game week 36 double as well. And so there's that scenario basically where you can use it in the blank. And then there's the other scenario, which I think is the best and most optimal time and way to get the most maximum of points out of using your free hits, which is of course, again, using your free hits to field an 11 that has double game weeks. Literally just the entire 11 has double game weeks. And so, for example, I myself have the free hits. I'm looking to maneuver game week 29 because again, it's a small blank. I can find a way to using my transfers to get 11 players who will definitely be playing. Then finding a way I feel I have enough transfers between game week 29 to game week 34 to be able to maneuver and create a team which could possibly maneuver that big blank. Then I could use my free hits in the bigger blank being that double game week 36 where I'm able to field an entire 11 of people. And so I say this because I think last season was the best season. That was a great example where a lot of people used the free hit chip in the blank game week. It was around game week 29, 28 as well. And a whole lot of us just got, it was one of the lowest scoring points game week in FPL history. And so we felt like, well, what was the point? What was the point? On top of that, we all somewhat had the same players. So you going into a free hits, everybody's trying to avoid this, having a team with very little fielded. But whether you used it or not, you were still getting the same amount of points as anybody else. And so I realized at that point, then it's like, actually maneuver a blank game week if you can, and use this the way that chips are meant to be used to get your most optimum amount of points that you can out of the actual chip. And so that's my recommendation when it comes to using the free hit chip. Now, the next one is the assistant manager chip. But before we go on to the assistant manager chip, what I want to do is, if you think, damn, this guy might know his stuff, then you know what? Hit that subscribe button because it will go a long way for me. I got a whole lot of content for you guys. I'm on here 3 times a week to 4 times a week giving you FPL content. And make sure that you like this so that it can also go to any other people who are looking for a chip guide in this game week as well, and those who are slowly migrating to becoming engaged managers like you. So now let's go on to the assistant manager chip. Another chip which is widely talked about in game week 24, looking ahead of the Liverpool double and the Everton double. Now, I have a video that fully discusses what the assistant manager chip does. And I think if you want to go in depth with what it is and stuff like that, I think go and check that video out. It will be in the corner over over there for you guys. So just check it out. Yeah, it will be definitely in the corner there. But I'm gonna briefly tell you basically what it is. But the in-depth video is in that corner there. Now, the system manager simply is you just picking a team which you think is going to be winning, and you pick the team by selecting the actual manager of the team, right? Now, say the manager does get sacked, that doesn't mean anything. It's not going to affect your points at all, right? Now, the perks of it is, of course, is they sort of want you to pick a manager which is somewhat the underdog, because they give you somewhat bonus points if you select a manager who's 5 places below a team that they're playing. So if they beat that team or even draw against that team, in the case of Everton versus Liverpool, then that team, that manager will acquire a huge sum of points, almost 20 points, somewhat 30 points in just that specific game. So for example, in this game week, where it's Everton playing against Leicester and Liverpool, Everton playing Leicester being below them, of course, they can walk away with about like 10, 12 points just from winning that, depending on how many goals are scored, which also you get points for goals scored, you get points for winning, you get points for winning as well. But as I mentioned, when Everton goes and plays Liverpool, you get more points because you beat a team that was 5 places above you. You also get your extra bonus points because you scored a certain amount of goals. And yeah, as I mentioned, the more in depth of this chip is in the corner, so you can go check that out. But quite frankly, you're picking a team which you believe is going to be beating the other team, and there's bonus points based on mostly you beating a team which is higher up, 5 places higher up than you. That said, right, when I think the best time to use the system manager chip, the most optimal time to use system manager chip depends a lot on the time of the season. And so a lot of managers are thinking use it at the end of the season, where there's going to be what they call teams on the beach, teams that have nothing to fight for. They're in the middle of the table, and there's the lower teams, and they're playing them, quite frankly, to survive relegation. So they mostly have like a better chance of actually beating that team because they're not really in it for the fight. They want to just get themselves into preseason not without a scratch. And so they don't necessarily go all out. And most cases, the actual relegation team or bottom team tends to draw and even win against those teams in some cases. And so a lot of managers are going to go and migrate to that side and try and use that in the case of actually chasing. But I haven't heard a lot of that type of strategy. And I say that because I think even this specific game week 24, I think if you are a daredevil and you are chasing, I think this is a brilliant time and a magnificent time actually to go for David Moyes. I say this because he's really changed things around in the team. They've won a couple of games as well. And I think they can really give Leicester, of course, they can definitely win that Leicester game. So that's some points they're done for you. Good. We'll see how many goals they actually score, which could also really help. And then I think they can give Liverpool a run for their money because they're playing at home as well. I think the fans are going to be up for it. I think the team, Moyes being back there, being back in a Merseyside derby, I think he's going to be up for it. And I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised if Everton walk away with a draw there. Now, it's been, I won't lie to you, I've considered it and it's been very tempting for me. But I'm not so much of a daredevil. And that's why I say if you are a daredevil, then I think this is basically the best time for you to play it. Again, that takes me to what I think the second scenario is. It's more about the fixtures, right? And so one of the traits of the system manager is when you play the chip, it will be locked for 3 game weeks. And so the system manager can accumulate points in game week 1, 2, and 3 of the time from the time you actually activate it. So for example, you activated this game week 2024, it'll be active for 25 and 26, right? Now, if your manager in those 3 game weeks are, of course, going up against, teams which you fairly feel like are in, for example, Tottenham, they're in a relegation form, meaning that they're basically playing like a relegation side. They're not winning any games. If a bottom team goes up against them, it's a great opportunity to actually win, to go up against them and play them, so you can actually get those maximum amount of points. If there's managers basically in those positions and it can do that as well, then I think then that would be another optimal time to actually play the assistant manager chip without you really thinking, okay, I need to go play it at the end of the season, at that time of the season. No, if you feel like the row of fixtures are there, you can definitely do it. And you can also change your manager as well, but it will take up a transfer. So when you play it in the first week, it will be a free transfer for the manager. You get him, but in the next week, you'll be using an actual transfer. So, think about it carefully in case you want to use that transfer rather for a player transfer than a manager transfer. But you can use it for a manager transfer to change to a different team, a different manager's team. So that you can actually play a different team, which is possibly 5 points, five places above you. So, yeah, that's the assistant managership. Again, check out the full in-depth video up there at the top if you want to look at an in-depth more video about the assistant manager. Now, the last chip here is the wildcard. So we get 2 wildcards in a season, one in the beginning of the season, and you can use that anytime from game week 1 to game week 19, and in the second half of the season, game week 20 on, sometimes game week 21 going on. So right now we should all have our second wildcard, and you have to use the first wildcard before game week 19 or 20. And then the second wildcard, of course, comes into play. So you can't carry over your wildcard. But nonetheless, the beauty of the wildcard this season is we have 5 free transfers, which we can actually also carry over now. And so if you have 5 free transfers before you play a wildcard and you play a wildcard, you make all the changes you want to change as well, which is the beauty of it, which I really love as well. Then after playing the wildcard in the next game week, you can actually still have 5 free transfers to make some more changes to your actual team. And that hasn't been done before because we used to just have 2 transfers. And so we couldn't actually transfer the 2 transfers onto the other side of the wildcard. But now having 5, we can actually do it. Amazing. Optimal time to play this card, quite frankly. This card also requires some creativity, the very same type of creativity I mentioned with the free hit, and looking at how exactly you want to use your other chips. And that's where this one is. It's usually used somewhat to set you up for the bench boost. For example, like I mentioned, the most optimal time to use the bench boost is when you have an entire 11 and the bench doubling. And so you could quite frankly play dead end to a specific, say, game week. The big double is in game week 36. So you can actually play your, and I think this is actually a good time to sort of map out how you can actually play all your chips together. So how I would do it if I had all of the chips, quite frankly, is yes, fine, cool, it's not the most optimal time, but I would play my triple captain this game week 24. I put that on Mo Salah. That chip, it's done, it's gone. I would maneuver past 29 and not play any chip at all. In game week 33, which is a double, I would play my free hit, right? Because then I can actually create an entire team of players who are literally just going to be doubling, and I believe there'll be enough teams there where you can create an actual 11. But at the same time, I would also make sure that I've made the moves and the right transfers to make sure that in that blank game week of 34, I can actually maneuver that game week as well, where I don't use any card because I'm already using my free hit. So I get a whole 11 of people who are doubling, maneuver 34, set myself a wild card in game week 35, and then I bench boost in game week 30. I bench boost in game week 36, where I then have my entire team, quite frankly, doubling, and the people as well on the bench doubling, and that's when I bench boost as well. And so, I think that leaves out my assistant manager. I think if I was daring and I had all 5 cards, all chips, I'd actually use my assistant manager now, and I'll put it on David Moyes. then I would move my free hit to game week 34, just to maneuver that as well. Just to actually, yeah, that's what I'd actually do. I'd actually do that because I just feel like, yeah, I just feel like there's going to be a lot of upside. I think there's also a big chance here where, Everton, Moyes could be, you could play Moyes, have a lot of upside in terms of if he beats Liverpool or draw to Liverpool, amazingly, you can get a lot of points. And then, again, this is like hoping, it most likely won't happen. There's still a chance where Fulham and Tottenham could double, but I would then move to Marco Silva because he's going to be playing Nottingham Forest. He's also going to be playing Tottenham if Tottenham beat Liverpool in the Carabao Cup, which they got a 1-0 lead, and all they need to do, quite frankly, at Anfield is really just draw, hold them back, right? And there could be 1-1, there could be 0-0, which is a highly bad possibility, but they will go through in the Europa League as well. So their fixtures will need to be moved around, and if that's the case, it will most likely go in game week 25. So they would bank in game week 29, and their picture would move to game week 25. And so you could actually find yourself in a position where you actually have a manager doubling in 24 and doubling in 25, where you can actually change your manager now in game week 25 to a Marco Silva. And then whether he's doubling or not, it's still good because he's playing somebody 5 places above him, more than 5 places above him. And then you can move the chip again, looking at somebody else, or if you want to and feel like you've taken too much risk in the first 2 game weeks, put it on another manager or leave it on Marco Silva if he's playing a team that is below him, which you feel can beat him, or you can change it to a team or a manager who's quite frankly going to be playing a game where you believe, okay, this person is definitely going to win. But it's the Premier League, anything can happen. And that's why, we love the game, man. That's why we love the game. But anyway, guys, if you love this, please hit that like button. Most importantly, subscribe for me. Really, really, really appreciate it, guys. Honestly, love to hear more from you guys. If you got any questions, put that in the actual comment section. And then I also have a couple of videos here which you can actually watch if you're still not sure whether or not you want to subscribe to me. But other than that, guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.